My name is Sarah Miller, and I always thought I knew everything about my husband's family. When I married David, I gained not only a loving partner but also a second family that welcomed me with open arms. His father, Richard, was especially kind to me, quiet, respectful, always the gentleman. I never imagined that one day, he would change my life in a way I could never have expected. David worked as a project engineer for a construction company. His job often required him to travel out of state for weeks at a time. I was used to it. Our marriage had its rhythm, video calls, late-night messages, and countdowns until he returned home. We trusted each other completely. But last fall, something changed. David had been assigned to a project in Chicago. He'd be gone for almost 2 months. We hugged tightly at the airport that morning, neither of us realizing how much would change before he came back. The first few days were quiet. I worked from home, spent time cooking new recipes, and called David every night. Then one evening, I heard the doorbell. It was Richard. "Hey, Sarah," he said softly, standing there in his old denim jacket. "Just thought I'd check in. I know David's gone, and it gets lonely." I smiled. "That's so thoughtful of you, Dad. Come in." He brought me some homemade soup and we chatted for an hour. It felt comforting, like family should. But then his visits became more frequent. Every other day, then almost daily. Sometimes he'd fix small things around the house, change a light bulb, or bring groceries. I thought it was sweet. But sometimes I could sense something deeper, like he was trying to distract himself from something heavy. One evening, I asked, "Richard, is everything okay? You've been coming by a lot." He hesitated. "Yeah, sometimes the house feels too quiet. I like having someone to talk to." I nodded, understanding. His wife, David's mother, had passed away 5 years ago. He'd been living alone ever since. I figured loneliness was taking its toll. Weeks went by. One night, I found a small box on my doorstep. Inside was a photograph, an old one, worn around the edges. It was David as a little boy, standing beside a woman I didn't recognize. She wasn't his mother. I flipped the photo over. On the back, in faded ink, was written, "For Richard, never forget us." Confused, I decided to ask him about it the next day. But before I could, he came by looking more tired than usual. His hands trembled slightly as he handed me an envelope. "Sarah," he said quietly, "if anything ever happens to me, promise you'll give this to David." I frowned. "Richard, what's going on? Are you sick?" He shook his head. "Just some things from the past. Things I should have told him long ago." That night, I couldn't sleep. Something about his tone haunted me. The next morning, I decided to call David, but I didn't want to worry him while he was away, so I held off. A few days later, Richard didn't show up like usual. I texted him, but there was no reply. Then I got a call, from the local hospital. "Mrs. Miller, this is County General. Your father-in-law has been admitted. You're listed as his emergency contact." My heart dropped. When I arrived, I found Richard sitting up in a hospital bed, oxygen tube at his nose but still smiling weakly. "Sarah, you shouldn't have rushed," he said. "It's just a small scare." My heart's not what it used to be. Tears welled up. "Why didn't you tell me?" He smiled faintly. "Because I didn't want pity. I just wanted to feel like part of the family again." Then he looked serious. "That envelope I gave you, keep it safe. There's something David deserves to know." He fell asleep shortly after. I sat beside him for hours, thinking about the photograph and the letter. When he was discharged 2 days later, I drove him home. The car was silent most of the way. Then he suddenly said, "Sarah, I made mistakes, long before you came into this family. Mistakes I can't undo." I didn't push him. I could tell it was painful. The next week, Richard didn't wake up one morning. I got the call from his neighbor. He had passed away peacefully in his sleep. The funeral was small and emotional. David came home immediately, devastated. He loved his father deeply and blamed himself for not being there more often. After everyone left, I remembered the envelope. When I handed it to David, his brow furrowed. "What's this?" "Your dad gave it to me before, he said it was important." David opened it slowly. Inside was a handwritten letter and several documents. I watched as his eyes scanned the words, then widened in disbelief. "Oh my God," he whispered. "Sarah, my dad had another son." I froze. "What?" He nodded slowly, eyes glistening. "Before he met my mom, he was engaged to someone else. She left town before I was born, and she was pregnant. He never told anyone. I sat beside him, speechless. The letter went on to explain how Richard had spent years searching for that lost child, never finding him. He carried that guilt for decades, and when he met me, I reminded him of the woman he'd once loved, because she apparently looked a lot like me. That was why he had grown so attached. He wasn't overstepping boundaries, he was seeing a reflection of his past and trying to make peace with his mistakes. Tears streamed down my face as David finished reading. He didn't mean to burden you, David said softly. He just didn't want to die with secrets. A month later, while sorting through Richard's belongings, we found more letters, proof that he'd been sending money to an adoption agency years ago. With the help of a social worker, David finally found his half-brother, a man named Michael, living just a few hours away. Meeting Michael was emotional. He looked so much like Richard. When he learned the truth, he cried. He said he'd always felt like a part of him was missing, and now he finally understood why. That day, as we stood together, David, Michael, and I realized what Richard had really done while his son was away. He wasn't hiding a scandal. He was trying to reunite a broken family before it was too late. In the end, his secret didn't destroy us. It brought healing, understanding, and a new bond that David never knew he had. Sometimes, the most shocking truths aren't about betrayal, they're about love, regret, and the lengths someone will go to make things right before they say goodbye.